Awesome. All right. So here we are. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I am so excited. I've been looking forward to this event for a couple weeks now. One, for the opportunity for each and every single one of you to get some more information on our criminology criminal justice program. But ultimately, we have a great cast of characters in here today to really be able to kind of give you some great information on our criminology criminal justice program, more information about Niagara University, and really being able to answer your questions and provide some insight on what makes Niagara University's criminology criminal justice program the premier criminology criminal justice program in New York State, because it is truly a really awesome opportunity to come in and really tap into a bunch of different areas across the criminal justice spectrum. So one, I encourage all of you to feel free to turn your cameras on. We'd love to see your faces. I do ask if everybody can just stay muted. That way we can hear the presenter speaking and be able to hear them clearly. As we're going through the chat, or as we're going through the presentation here, please feel free, if you have any questions or something pops up, use the chat box. You can just send in any questions at any time. We'd be happy to answer. We will leave time at the end for any questions, but if you think of anything that's pertinent that you'd like to ask, feel free. If you're too embarrassed to ask your question to the group, feel free to send it to me right in the private message. You can send it directly to me. My name is Kyle Schwindler. I work right in the admissions office, and I work very closely with the Criminology Criminal Justice Department on our campus. So I am so excited to be able to present to you the three folks that we have in here. But all of you registered and you saw the wonderful name Dr. Dana Radatz. She is one of our full-time faculty members here in the department. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce her and let her steal the show.
Wow, such a lead up there. Hopefully I follow up on all those dreams you have. Really quick, I would love to, since Kyle said that you should use the chat, I would really love to hear from all of you, and maybe you could tell me really quick what it is you're looking for in a future career. And if you don't have an idea, that's totally cool, because I didn't at your stage. So if you could maybe just shoot something in the chat, maybe you're thinking about going into law enforcement, victim advocacy, corrections, or my personal favorite is, quote, keeping my options open, which is what I told my parents until I was about 27. So feel free to also choose that one, but shoot something in the chat. Oh, I'm loving it. Forensic investigation, law enforcement. Ooh, forensic psychology. I'm digging it. Law enforcement. Okay. Anybody else want to share? Okay. Oh, lots of forensic psychology. Profiling. I'm seeing a little bit here. Seeing some themes, if you will. Undecided. Totally fair. I just like to say I'm keeping my options open. So undecided is equally fair. So thank you very much for participating. If you haven't yet and you still want to put something in the box, please do. I'll keep looking over to the right. And just as Kyle said, if you want to send something to me directly, feel free to do so. I'll try to keep an eye on that as well. So first and foremost, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for turning your cameras on if you're able to do so. It's really enjoyable to see human faces. I taught all of last year online in response to the pandemic. And so it's been a different experience. I'm really thankful to be back in the classroom, but it's really great to see your faces. So I believe Kyle has first asked me to introduce myself and maybe what brought me to Niagara University. So if you'll forgive me for what I will say is my first of many, probably mini brief TED Talks today. My first one will be, who am I and why are you taking the time to listen to what I have to say with your very brief amount of time today. And so I hail from the great state of Michigan originally, and I came from a very small rural town where my exposure to really was very little other than the basic classes offered in a small rural town, which was math and science and English and a couple Spanish classes. And I really would not change that experience whatsoever. And I love it. And my parents still live there, and I love to go back there and find some quiet and solace. But when I went to college, it was to a very large state school. And that was the first time that I had experienced diversity, experienced being around people that maybe didn't look like me or think like me or talk like me. And I loved every minute of it. Could not get enough of it. And when I went to college, I thought I was going to be a medical doctor because I really like to help people. And I had to take a couple of gen ed classes because when you first get your schedule, they sort of help you out. And so they set you up with some general education classes, which are part of a liberal arts education. And we can certainly talk about that if anybody has any questions. But generally, if you know what your major is, they'll put you in a couple classes that are related to your major. And then they'll put you in some classes that are more gen ed related, which everybody has to take. And I happened to take a psychology class, and I had never been exposed to a psychology class. So all of you individuals who put psychology in there, awesome. I'm digging it, because I took that class and was like, I don't want to be a medical doctor anymore. I want to go into psychology. So I switched my major, which is probably where my parents were starting to get the handle of I don't know what I want to do yet. I'm keeping my options open. So, I decided to switch my major to psychology, and I didn't turn back. I really enjoyed taking lots of classes in psychology, but I quickly learned that I was very interested in abnormal human behavior. And in one of my introduction to psychology courses, they showed the Stanford prison experiment, which was a very pivotal experiment that examined how people behave when they're in the prison system. And it took place at Stanford University, hence why it's called the Stanford Prison Experiment. And I was fascinated by it. And though I do not want to age myself, I went to college at a time where crime television shows were very rare versus now when you turn Netflix on and there's like a million gazillion of them and you can binge them all. And I talk about them in my classes regularly because we all digest pop culture. Stacey can attest as a wonderful student of mine in one of my classes. And so with that being said, I thought, wow, I think I need to take a criminology class. And so that is where my blending of taking psychology classes and criminology classes really got its start. And so I took all of the psychology classes and majored in psychology, but I really probably should have double majored because I ended up taking so many criminology classes. So lesson number one I have for you, I never went to see my academic advisor. And I should have gone to see my academic advisor. So let this be my first lesson to you. Going to see your academic advisor is always beneficial because had I done so, he or she may have been able to help me double major or navigated me into taking better classes or more classes that would have better suited me. So with that being said, when I graduated, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I just really knew that I liked the topic of psychology and I really liked the topic of criminology. And as you can imagine, when you are the age that you are, there's a lot of pressure to know what you want to do with the rest of your life. And I recognized that pressure because I was in that same boat. And at 21, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I really liked this topic. And so though I don't recommend this is how you decide to go to graduate school, I was like, well, hey, I really like taking classes, so maybe I should keep doing that. So I enrolled in the graduate program and explored doing some research with a graduate professor. And so that was when, in my graduate program, I took a course that focused on victims rather than on offenders. And that was the first time, unlike in today, because certainly a few years have passed since I was in undergrad, that I actually got to learn more about victims than offenders. And I realized that, oh, this must be what I'm really, really interested in. What is it about victimization that really draws me in. And remember, I wanted to be a medical doctor and I wanted to help people. And I think in all of my other classes of psychology and wanting to understand behavior and in criminology, we sometimes talked about victims, but I also understood that many individuals who engage in offending behaviors have histories of victimization and trauma. And I started to really realize that maybe that was where I was on to something, that I was getting a little bit in each class, but I couldn't quite figure it out. So again, I'm going to point out, going to your academic advisors can help you in this process a little bit faster than maybe thinking about it on your own. So it was in my master's program that I really realized that I had a passion for working with victims and doing something related to victimology. So I have an undergraduate degree in psychology and I have a master's degree in criminology and criminal justice. And I focused my work specifically on violence and victimization. I then taught for a couple years because I still wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that I had a heart of gold and I wanted to help people. But I knew if I did that every day that I would have burnout because it takes a special kind of human to work with victims and do victim service provider work. And so instead, I thought that it would be better if I went into research, which was something I was really fascinated in, and if I could teach others how to do really good work with victim service providing. And so I decided I wanted to get my PhD in criminology and criminal justice and work to find solutions to solving violence, to solving how we might be able to help individuals learn behaviors other than violence and ways in which we can better support victims in the criminal justice system and outside of the criminal justice system. And so that's why I decided to get my PhD. I went to the University of Nebraska and I got my PhD in criminology and criminal justice, and I specialize in violence and victimization, and in particular, gender-based violence. And so I have a specialty focused on dating violence, domestic violence, rape, and sexual assault, but really looking at how gender impacts violence and victimization. So that in a nutshell is what brought me here today. And I hope one of the major takeaways that you get from the talk today is that it's okay to go to college. Well, yeah, it's definitely okay to go to college. That's definitely major. Number one is okay to go to college. Number two, it's okay to go in with something and then change your mind. And I encourage you to, because that's what you should be doing in college, is exploring different things when you're in college, because it's a safe place to do so. And you should be exposed to new material. And if you end up thinking that you're on the right path and you love it and you want to keep going, that's awesome. But it's also really cool if you change your mind and you find something else you're really passionate about, because in the end, I'm sure you'll find the right path. And what's really important, if you choose that Niagara is the place that you want to make that happen, we all are invested in helping you do that. And because I was a first generation student, I didn't have anybody to ask questions for. I couldn't rely on my parents, or I didn't have anybody in my family who had gone to college. And I tried to figure it out on my own. And so when I work with students, I really think about that. I think about my own experiences, and I work really hard so that I can help my students maybe have an easier time, or at least relate to them as they're navigating the choices they make towards how they want to work in their future and their future careers, whether it be something in criminology or something related to it. So that was my first TED Talk. Yay, nay? Does anybody have any questions? Comments, fears, anything I can address for you before we continue on? Awesome. Everyone's going to decide to go on the medical route instead of criminology. Yes, no? Okay, cool. All right. So with that being said, when I finished my PhD and I decided where it is I want to work, I really was open to moving anywhere in the United States. I just really wanted to find a place that really cared about its students and really cared about working in the community to make a difference. Because what I wanted to do was to use my knowledge as a researcher to change how we were working in the field to better address victims and to work with offenders so that they would be supported and maybe learn alternatives to violence. And so in that regard, I think it's really important to recognize that Niagara University follows the Vincentian mission And while I wasn't particularly drawn to the university because it was a small private Catholic school, the mission itself was something that really spoke to my personal moral character, which was that they were trying to help individuals who were disadvantaged. And that was something I definitely felt aligned with. And so the university as a whole tries really hard to have its students understand how to work in your everyday life towards helping others who may need more assistance. And so, as you can imagine, as a victimologist, as someone who advocates to help those who are less fortunate, help those who have been harmed, this really aligned for me. And so when I came to interview at Niagara, it really felt like coming home. And I know that sounds really cheesy and corny, and I don't mean it to be, but when I'm on campus, I really feel like a part of a family, that everybody's doing something collectively to contribute to a better place and to a better community. And the way that I do that in the criminal justice department is to teach my students how to advocate for victims, how to promote self-care, how to recognize the importance of what trauma and victimization can do to someone, and ways in which we can better help them and assist them, and maybe better address them in criminology and criminal justice. So that was a lot for you. I see a hand up. Greg, what can I help for you?
So I actually just wanted to add on to the feeling at home kind of part.
Yeah.
For those who don't know me, my name's Greg Casey. I'm a transfer here at NU. I'm a junior. This is my first year. And I went to a community college in Syracuse for 2 years. And for me, family is like the biggest thing. And so that's why I stayed home for the first 2 years, and I got to save money and figure out what I really want to do. And I just decided I wanted to push myself. So I decided to go to a different college after those 2 years, but I wanted to go a little further away from family. And when I went to NU, one of the summer meetings, someone said in the presentation that you're not a number. So that really meant a lot to me, because I consider myself like not a number. I consider myself as someone that's like important, just as like every one of you guys right now. So I thought that was a really big deal. And then also, like, now being here at NU, the staff, everyone I've met is just so nice. So it really does feel like at home. So I just wanted to add on to that.
Thanks for saying that, Greg. That's one of the things I really love about Niagara. And I think many people say it, but it's woven into the fabric of what Niagara really means. And I think that the only way that you can really see that is being on campus and to really interact with the people who are a part of the Purple Eagle family. And certainly I would ask Stacey to also contribute to that. But for me personally, I think it's about when I went to a very large state school, and then when I did again for my master's and my PhD, nobody knew who I was. And when I was an undergrad, I emailed one professor maybe once in the 4 years that I was in college. Granted, email wasn't as big as it was then. I seem to be aging myself quite a bit during this Zoom session. But what I will say is I thought I was bothering professors. Many of them didn't know who I was. I never thought that I could talk to them about anything. And here at Niagara, I have multiple conversations with students regularly. I know their paths. Many of them have taken multiple courses with me. I know what they want to do after they graduate. I'm thinking about them consistently. I have close interactions with many community agencies, and they'll approach me and say, I'm looking for an intern. And I say, oh, I have the perfect student for you. And I'll send an email to that student and say, hey, I just found out about this really cool internship opportunity. I think it'd be really great for you on your pathway to, going off to law school, or, so on and so forth. And that is something that you're not going to get at a large institution, unless you're working really hard to get to know those faculty members. And the class sizes are certainly par to none. I have 20 students in my classes, and I have colleagues at other universities who are teaching upwards of 150 students in a class. And so it's just naturally much harder to get to know students on that level. And so if you're really thinking about it, you are getting to interact with that expert. And in this case, that would be me in my classroom, one-on-one, and I'm giving you a lot of attention. And then you're going to come to my office hours and we're going to talk about what it is you want to do when you graduate and what are the ways I can help you do it. And so those are the kinds of things that really make you feel more like family and less like someone's number and a random email that comes in my inbox. So Stacey, do you have anything to add to that? Now that Stacey is a student of mine and she also runs the Criminal Justice Association, which is the student club for the Criminal Justice Department.
Hi, so I'm Stacey. I am a junior criminal justice major, pre-law minor, and I am president of the Criminal Justice Association. Bouncing off of what Dr. Radatz had to say in regards to faculty, I have not seen any school that has had faculty that has cared this much about their students. My first memory of being on campus was during my private tour, where I was supposed to meet with one of the criminal justice professors, and I was like, okay, that'll be really cool. And I go in and I meet 5 of them. I am sitting at a table with every criminal justice professor, and it is incredible. Talking to them about what my future aspirations are, what I'm looking for, all that kind of stuff. It was an incredible experience. And being here for a few years now, taking classes with different professors, I've been able to develop really good relationships with a few of them, talk to them about my plans and have them possibly hook me up with future internships or possible employment opportunities, and just suggestions on how to better my experience as a student and a prospect for any future employers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Great. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, I can keep talking. I can talk for days. They pay me to do this all the time.
Right.
So, you know. Some other really cool things that we do in the criminal justice department that I really wanted to highlight for you, or that I can really speak to more personally, is that I feel really passionate about doing victim advocacy events. And so myself and another colleague who's in the College of Education, Dr. Beebe, she and I created 2 of the largest student advocacy events that we host on campus, and they've become really a part of the culture on campus. And Take Back the Night is one of them, which is an event where we advocate against sexual violence, and it happens every April. This year, we're really excited to bring it back post-pandemic or close to the end of a pandemic. And in years past, we've had 400 in attendance, which is pretty large for a small private school, and especially on something about violence prevention. And so we do that, and we also do a domestic violence awareness event, which is always done in October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that usually pulls in around 200. This year we had 230, so we had the most we've ever had. And each event we raise money, we raise awareness, we get a lot of students involved, and it's a really cool experience to see students engage in these ways. And so that's obviously a part of the criminal justice department, given that I spearhead some of that, but a lot of different ways for students to also become involved. So students get involved through different organizations, one of them being the Criminal Justice Association. Active Minds is the association for the psychology department. And so each of them may have a resource table at the event, and they may be on the planning committee to help put it together. And so it really does become a small village puts it on at that point. And it's not just one of us putting it together, but really a planning committee of 30 or more kind of putting it together. And so those are really cool events that happen each semester that are really opportunities for students to learn how to collectively advocate and work towards something that they may feel really passionate about. And another thing that I also am really passionate about is teaching students the importance of becoming citizens of the world. And what does it mean to expand beyond what your immediate experience is? And if you remember when I said that going to college for me was really an eye-opening experience because I had not really been exposed to diversity before then. And so also kind of growing up in a working class family, I hadn't really traveled outside of maybe doing some camping and one trip to Disney World, which was awesome. And my parents did a great job, but I just didn't really see the world that much, right? And that's okay. But when I went to college, I learned, oh my gosh, I could really see the world. And so that inherently built my love of travel. And so each year I develop a study abroad trip for students in the criminal justice department. And so over my time at Niagara, which I'm entering into my 7th year, I have taken nearly 100 students to 9 different countries. And I really take a lot of pride in helping students to learn how to find a love of travel and to really understand how to look at the world as your ability to continue to learn outside of your comfort zone. And so, for instance, one year I took students to the Netherlands. Another year I took students to Germany, Poland, and the Czech Republic, and we looked at World War II and state-sanctioned violence, and really kind of focused on what is it like to look at victimization from a perspective of violence through world wars, and what does that mean after generations. And so we were able to do a lot of really interesting but very thought-provoking reflections on that trip. I've taken students to Ireland and Northern Ireland, Britain, Scotland, and what's the third one? No, the UK, Scotland. There's 3 of them. They go together. Wales. Oh my gosh, I'm like losing it here. Geography is not my first. I love to travel, but I have to think about it for a minute. So my hope, we were supposed to go to the Netherlands last year, but I had to sort of cancel that due to COVID. My hope on my next trip is to take students to Spain. That's on my trip for sure. And maybe Italy. And we're supposed to circle back to Ireland at some point. There seems to be a lot of love for Ireland amongst the Western New Yorkers. So within that, I'm sorry, my dog is making a big appearance right now, who's named Benson after Olivia Benson from Law and Order SVU, because I'm a dedicated criminal justice person. So within that regard, I will say study abroad opportunities are really great. I work very hard to make them affordable for students. I make them very hard, I work very hard to have the students really get a lot out of those experiences. So if you've never traveled before, or if you've traveled a lot, there are really cool experiences across the board. And many students go multiple times because I try to change the trip out every year so that students can go a different year if they want without having the opportunity to go back to the same place. And so I can also talk more about that if you're interested in that as well.
Dr. Radatz, I think what's really interesting about the study abroad opportunities and what also makes our program a bit unique is that these trips are typically right around that 2-week mark-ish, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of times, and there's nothing wrong with longer study abroad trips, but again, a key point to go and see your academic advisor. When I was in college, someone told me about a study abroad trip, and given that I was a working class student and I was juggling 3 jobs at one point in time while I was a student, someone was talking to me about a study abroad trip, and I was like, are you kidding? I can barely afford my Easy Mac, so I'm not really quite sure how I'm going to afford that trip. They didn't really pitch it to me the right way, which was these are affordable trips and they don't have to be full semester long trips. So the way that I work this study abroad is that I teach the class over a spring semester. So you take the class with me and we do all the preparation. I teach you all the things about what it is we're doing. So when I did the state sanctioned violence course, we talked about World War II. We talked about what it means when a government is promoting and engaging in violence that they think is legitimate and other people do not. And we think about all of the consequences and we talk about those things and we have those lectures, and I prepare you with all this information. And then after that graduation weekend, whether or not you're graduating or not, we just always have to go after graduation because some seniors may be on the trip. Then we go on about a 2-week, maybe sometimes 16 days, we go on an excursion after that. And so it's really manageable for students who want to study abroad experience, but they don't want to go for a full semester or they're not able to afford a full semester. And I work really hard to make it affordable. So all of my study abroad trips have been somewhere between $3,200 and $3,800. And that includes airfare and all of your overnight stays and a lot of your food. and all of your stuff while you're over there. So most of the time it's a little bit more while you're over there for the things that you want to do on your free time and a couple of your dinners. But for the most part, it is pretty affordable to consider that you would be studying abroad for 2 weeks for less than $4,000. And so I really do try to make that a thing of possibilities for students. And I also take suggestions. So if you really plead with me, as many students have before, that's how I got roped into figuring out how to do it in the UK. So yeah, really the major takeaway I want you to understand is that the possibilities at Niagara are endless, and faculty members are really, really working hard to give you the experiences that you might be interested in to hopefully give those experiences to you so that you can use them to further yourself as in your own educational journeys or your professional journeys or your personal journeys. Any questions yet? I promise I do just as great answering questions as I do talking.
Who's not excited to travel again? You know, that's like, it's getting that travel bug back out there and getting ready to go. So study abroad is always a hot topic, but I just love the opportunities that students can come and you can study abroad, you know, most of your years. You know, freshman year, it's come in, get settled, get taken care of and get acclimated. But, you know, if you're looking your sophomore year, your junior year, your senior year, it's something we do so well. And I did go on the Amsterdam, Netherlands trip when I was a student here, and I can be an advocate and say it was an absolutely awesome time and a really great opportunity to get that world perspective and really be able to look at that comparative justice, how other areas, you know, run and operate, and saying, can that work back in the United States? Can we do that? You know, being able to get those impressions. So thank you for explaining that. I love talking about study abroad.
I know, it's one of my favorite big fashions. And also for all of those who are undecided or thinking about forensics or law, you do not have to be a criminal justice major. You can be any major. Though I am slightly partial to my criminal justice major because I think it's wonderful. I certainly will always accept students who are interested in travel and will certainly take those into consideration. So that's not a requirement. It just means you might be learning more about criminal justice on the actual trip or in the class for sure. And you can go your freshman year if there's space. Any other questions? Everybody has to have questions about going to college. If not, I'm going to start cold calling on questions as to what is like the thing you're most interested about Niagara. This is where the videos go off and everything goes. Okay, somebody has to tell me something because I've been talking so much. Did I say anything that sounded interesting to you? Raise your hand. And don't just, thank you, Stacey. I really appreciate the moral support. Stacey's in my class and she has to do these things. Thank you, Josephine. Oh, one of you thought one of the things that I said was interesting. I appreciate you. Thank you. I have a message. Lauren, thank you. Oh, wait, you're not raising your hand. Are you raising your hand because I said something interesting or you have a question?
The first one. I thought the study abroad was really interesting.
Thank you. Shana, I'm very sorry. I hate mispronouncing human names. Interesting or have a question?
I put a question in the chat for you, but I also thought what you said was interesting as well.
Oh, you're so sweet. I already like you. You're wonderful. Can we talk more about internships? Yes, we can talk more about internships. I love talking about internships because I think it's wonderful when students get experiences that are in the classroom, but also learning how to bridge them out in the real world. And so the way that we do that is in a couple different fashions. Within the criminal justice department, we have a class called Field Experience. and you can register for the class. And the professor who teaches it is Professor Winkley. And Professor Winkley used to be the police chief for I think it's the town of Lewiston. I was going to say city, but it's a little bit smaller than that. For the town of Lewiston, which is adjacent to Niagara University. And so it's really great because he has wonderful connections with law enforcement, but he also knows a lot of the other components of the justice system and has a lot of really great connections. So he's been able to facilitate those and created relationships in which we are now able to have internship opportunities for our students. So you can take that field experience class, and then Professor Winkley will work with you to essentially have an internship over the semester that you work with him one-on-one to establish. What it generally means is that you're getting college credit for that class, and it really requires you to do about 8 hours of volunteer work each week as part of the requirement for that class. In some regards, I have developed quite a few relationships with all of the victim service agencies in the county and also many in Erie County. And in that regard, they often approach me with having questions about interns and maybe looking for volunteers. And so in that way, because working with victims is more of a sensitive topic, I will identify students that have taken some of my classes and have some foundational understanding, and then we'll connect them more one-on-one with those agencies. And I will often, we do something called an independent study where I oversee the independent study and they get college credit, but it's more working with me independently rather than taking a class with Professor Winkley. So you can still get college credit for it. You're still doing the internship, but I'm working with that internship agency one-on-one and the student one-on-one just because of the sensitivity part of working with survivors and victims. But the other option is that we can also work with you if there's an area where you're interested, but perhaps we don't have a connection. We will always try our best to help you in that regard, or if you're looking for something maybe where you currently live. And in that way, we can help direct you in maybe how to facilitate those conversations or help you write letters to maybe find internships in your area. So again, this is where faculty members will do what they can to help you either in our location, or maybe if you're looking for something over the summer when you're back home, that's something we can also help you with. Does that help answer your question? Is there another specific question you have related to internships?
I think you pretty much answered it, but it was really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. So glad you're here today.
I think there was just one thing I wanted to add on that. I know we had some folks interested in some of the forensic pieces and getting in there, but I know, or I think I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Winkley, Professor Winkley. Yeah, Professor Winkley in his field experience class. It's an awesome class, really cool opportunities for folks to really dive in, like you were saying. But I think that there's some opportunities within the Niagara Falls Police Department to work right in their lab as well. Is that something that?
Occasionally in the past, we've been able to place students. It's a little bit trickier to get them in those places from what I understand, simply because there's some more science involved in that. You have to have some more particular training, and those have to do with more about chains of evidence rather than doing a ride along. And also when it comes to forensic pieces, you might also be taking more biology related classes. And so sometimes I think the assumption is, oh, I'm really interested in forensics, but forensic pieces of criminalists are a bit more of the science heavy pieces. So they're obviously very complementary, and we will work with an agency if we're able to get those internships, and we have landed them in the past. But it's something that Professor Winkley would work with you to see if we're able to do. But we have had them in the past, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. I see a question, a direct message about wondering if the school is diverse. And my response back to that is diverse in a multitude of ways, but in a variety of maybe how much diversity. Kyle, I think you probably have better numbers than I do.
Yeah, definitely. We have students coming across the board from multiple counties across New York State, across multiple states, and then also believe the number is 48 different countries we have students from on our campus, which is so awesome. Obviously, due to the pandemic and travel restrictions, a lot of our international students weren't able to make it, which also really helps to make a lot of friends from a bunch of different areas, which is always so awesome. So we're excited to really be able to welcome them back as soon as they can get back here. But also, outside of, just location bounds, our students are really diverse, one across the board in terms of interests, which is where we have over 100 clubs. So really being able to find diversity in one of your interests and what you're looking for is a really awesome opportunity on our campus. And, we have a lot of students that come from the Buffalo area, Rochester, Syracuse area, but really being able to understand that, if you're from the Buffalo area, not everybody thinks and acts the same. Or if you have somebody that, comes in from New York City, you're in these classes, and this is where I kind of bring it around full circle, is inside our classrooms, and Dr. Radatz, I'm sure you can add to this, is one, it's a little bit different than high school where we don't, we have a structure and we have an idea of what we need to accomplish through the semester, but we have a lot of flexibility inside the classroom to really pause for, what I like to call and, observe as teachable moments. Whereas if you have someone who's from, a city setting, they grew up in New York City, and then you have someone from rural New York, two very different mindsets, two very different upbringings, two totally different worldviews, but inside the classroom, the professor and the students really can be able to have the dialogue and have those conversations, be like, okay, wait, no, that's not my experience. For example, no, I don't take my shoes off when I come into the house. We wear our shoes in the house all the time. And they'd be like, no, I always take my shoes off when I come in the house. One of those things I'm sure your family does. My family's type A, we take our shoes off every time we're in the house. Some families, you walk around, you walk through your house with the shoes. My example is, and everybody has different mindsets. Everybody has different places where they come from. But when you're inside the classroom, it's such a really comfortable and respected area to really be able to speak your mind, really be able to say, that's not how I see it. And be like, okay, I hear you, but wait, can we talk through this? So in terms of being able to have students from all different areas and all different opportunities, when we're inside our classroom, we're on our campus, it is such an awesome opportunity here to be yourself, to feel comfortable, and really be able to explain yourself and express yourself in any way that you see and you feel fit, which I think is such an awesome representation of who we are. And as a student, as someone who was a student all 4 years here, that was my favorite part of going into classes. You're sitting in there and you're listening to someone, you're like, wait a minute, that is not how I thought the world works, or that's not my opinion. But you can feel comfortable to really speak up and have difference of opinions, but still respect each other and really be able to kind of go through that. So I know that I have a really long-winded answer for diversity, but I really think our university does a really nice job to make students feel comfortable and feel open to be themselves on campus.
I would also really like to add to that it's a little bit more about, we're also doing and implementing some new things on campus. So now we have, we just established this year a vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're doing a lot of things on campus to infuse really more efforts towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so recognizing that we are in Western New York, which is predominantly a more Caucasian-based location, and recognizing that's only one part of diversity, right? But thinking about it as we are taking steps towards ways in which we can promote more diversity, equity, and inclusion on campus. And with that, we are also doing things like in the classroom, like Kyle said, but for instance, in my classes, and Stacey can certainly attest to this, I talk about the importance of intersectionality. And when we talk about victimology, and we understand that when we learn about the experiences of victims and the experiences of individuals who engage in offending behaviors, that they're not all the same, that someone who's a female may experience something different than someone who's non-binary or someone who's identifies as male. And that may be different from someone who experiences something as a Black individual or someone who identifies as a Latina individual. And so really thinking about diversity in the classroom, as Kyle has mentioned, thinking about diversity in the ways in which our university is working towards promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion And also in the programming and the clubs that we offer, as Kyle said, we have something called the Office of Multicultural Affairs. It's called OMA on campus, and they are consistently hosting really cool opportunities for students and programming to attend to really give students opportunities to learn about different cultures, or to embrace and find individuals on campus who maybe have similar cultures. Just today, I was in lower level galley, which is where people go to find food, and Tim Hortons coffee, which are two very important things on a college campus. And today, OMA was featuring, they were homemade Jamaican meat pies, and oh my, it was the best Jamaican meat pie I've ever had, and I've actually been to Jamaica. It was wonderful, but it was a really cool thing that I could take part in on campus, and they were raising money for OMA. And so while we may lack diversity in some ways in terms of representation, we are certainly definitely seeing efforts made around embracing ways in which we can promote diversity in terms of learning, in terms of embracing equity on campus as well. So, and I see a second private message that says extra support. We do have an office for international students, and because we're so close to Canada, there have definitely been, I realize that Canada and the United States as a bi-international campus, we certainly have a really strong international office. And we, as Kyle said, we have many students from multiple countries around the world. And so I have worked really closely with the international office as the person who does study abroad. And I, from my experience, the international office has been very supportive and helpful. And so I would say yes in those regards as well. Any other questions about diversity or international students? Happy to help. Certainly every professor is going to teach classes differently. I can only speak to mine. You know, in criminal justice, certainly the national conversations that have been happening more recently, understanding intersectionality, understanding the importance of what it means to learn about the experiences that individuals have and the varying identities they have and how they may be different. So being a rural, someone who comes from a rural area may be different than someone who comes from an urban area, and what those experiences may be is certainly just one area, but it's important that we understand them when we're learning about human behavior. Any other questions you might have about the criminal justice system?
We love questions.
Yes. I also happen to be the graduate director for the Department of Criminal Justice, so I can also talk a little bit about that. Even though you're like, wait a minute, Dr. Radatz, I'm just thinking about going to undergrad. I will tell you, we have this really cool thing, which is called the 4+1 program, which means that you can get your undergraduate degree in 4 years and a master's degree in 1. So a lot of students will explore this opportunity. It means that in your junior year, you apply to the 4+1 program, and you can take 3 graduate level courses during your senior year, and they count towards your undergraduate degree, but then they also count towards your graduate degree. And so you're able to essentially double dip, for lack of a better word, and then be able to complete both of those degrees within a 5-year period. And so a lot of students take advantage of that, particularly students who are interested in going into federal positions, largely law enforcement, but lots of other positions as well, largely because when you work within the government, their pay scales are structured based off of education, or if you're looking to sort of, in New York, when you have to take exams to qualify for different positions, the ways in which you take an exam and get a score, but the way that you look more ideal within those set score ranges is to have things like maybe a graduate degree. So a lot of students might take advantage of that 4+1 program as a way to sort of give them a little bit more of an edge in those parameters. And so a lot of students like the idea of being able to do 2 degrees in 5 years. And so I'm happy to also talk about the grad program, but doesn't have to be today. You certainly can always send me an email or check in with me. Just like all the other criminal justice professors, we're always happy to help students out. Do you have a question? Yes, I would say your name. Can you tell me how to pronounce your name? Because I don't want to botch it.
Josery.
Yoseri?
Josery. It's pronounced with a J.
Josery?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was wondering what are the requirements as a junior so you can apply to the 4+1, is it?
Yeah, so the 4+1, you would just need to sort of fill out a standard application to the grad program, which is sort of like, what do you intend to do with your graduate degree? You would have to also have a GPA of a 3.0 or above, and 2 letters of recommendation. But largely, if you have a 3.0 and you've already been an undergraduate student, we generally feel pretty confident that you'll be able to get in the 4+1 program.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just to be clear, you don't have to do the 4+1 program. You can always finish your bachelor's degree and then choose to go into the master's program after. So even if maybe you have like a 2.75 or a 2.9 and you didn't meet that threshold, it doesn't mean you can't go on to get the master's program. It's just that maybe that accelerated program isn't really the way that you want to go. And so there's lots of ways around that. This is the 3rd time I'll say this is why you go and see your academic advisor. Oh, I see a couple more questions coming in. What are the other subjects or topics you learn throughout undergraduate? Can you clarify, do you mean in criminal justice or do you mean more broadly within all of the university?
More broadly, like criminology and criminal justice.
Awesome. I was hoping you were going to say that, because when you go more broadly, then I'm less confident. In criminology and criminal justice, we really think about your foundational. And so, well, most often what I try to tell students is when we say criminology and criminal justice really refers to the system. And when we say the system, we mean how an individual may work their way through the system. So that would start with law enforcement, so an arrest. Then you would go through the court system. So that would be courts. And then corrections would be some form of either institutional corrections or community corrections. So there are really 3 things. So policing, courts, and corrections. Okay. So the ology piece, the criminology piece, is really the study of crime. And so when we're thinking about saying criminology and criminal justice, the way the curriculum is designed is to really give you a foundational understanding of all of those pieces. So you would have an introductory understanding of the introduction to criminal justice, so teaching you a little bit of the system, an introduction to criminology, teaching you a little bit about what is the study of crime on an introductory level. Then you would be taking classes in law enforcement, corrections, juvenile justice, some of these more key components of the justice system that you would need to have a more foundational understanding in. You will need to understand research methods and statistics, because that's necessary to understanding how we understand crime through studying. You generally have to take 4 electives, which are the classes that you have a little bit more say in. So students who are interested in criminal justice electives, I should say more broadly. So these would be classes that maybe you get to choose. You could take a race, class, and gender. You could take, I teach a women in crime class. So if you're interested in maybe women as victims or offenders. I teach a class on violence, on victimology. I teach a class on prostitution and human trafficking. So this is where students kind of get to pick and choose some of the classes that they think might be of interest to them based on where they want to move forward with their degrees or what they're interested in. So we have classes like criminal investigation, serial killers always tends to be a big one, even though Stacey just got a lecture just this week or last week on serial killing and how it's a very rare event, even though we're fascinated about it. And so you get to kind of pick and choose a little bit, but you still get some of those foundational classes along the way. And then you have sort of those required courses from the university for your gen ed requirement. And then there's some more wiggle room in there where you get to take really any course within the university. But a lot of students will continue to take more electives from the criminal justice side of things because that's just really where they're interested in. Or students who maybe have a psychology major and then they're just filling up with a lot more criminology courses, their electives, and so on and so forth. Oh, I see another question come in, but I also see Stacey, you have your hand up. Do you want to add something before I answer this next question?
Yeah, I was just going to add on that all those electives on top of your base requirement courses for the criminal justice program really allow you to explore different avenues in criminal justice and different possible career paths that you haven't even thought of possibly going into. And you can really discover some stuff that you're actually really interested in that you had no idea that you would even be interested in. And if you take a class with the lovely Dr. Dana Radatz, you can learn a bunch of different topics that like I haven't even tried thinking of, which has been incredible. And it really gives you a bigger and more secular view of the system as a whole, rather than just focusing on law enforcement or corrections or the courts. You really get that immersive experience in it, which I really appreciate.
I didn't even pay her to say that. I need you all to know that. I have some other good questions here. What are other subjects or top? Oh, I think I already answered that one. What is your favorite course you have taught and why? Such a great question. Madeline, is that how you say your name? Okay, I didn't botch it. Oh, I'm doing well today. I'm doing well. What is my favorite course I teach? Oh, okay. Can I have two? You're asking a lot because I do teach a lot of courses. Okay. I feel very passionate about teaching victimology, and this is largely because when students take criminal justice classes and criminology classes, they're largely focused on individuals who are offending, so offenders, and they focus more on their experiences through the justice system. And they also are more often men. So statistically speaking, men are more engaging in crime than women. And so most of the classes that students take in criminology and criminal justice are inherently going to focus on men experiencing offending behaviors and their experiences in the criminal justice system. So my two favorite classes to teach are victimology, because we should always be talking about victims, because the informal crime equation, when you have a crime, there's always an offender and there's always a victim, right? And there's a reason why we never talk about the victim. Stay tuned should you decide to take my victimology class, because we talk about that like into like the first 2 or 3 classes. But essentially, I feel really passionate about teaching students the importance of understanding victimology and what that means to the overall understanding students have about the criminal justice system, largely because they're just not taught about victims. And I feel really passionate about that. And so I love to teach victimology for that reason. Secondly, also, I really love to teach women in crime, because a lot of times women and gender, I really should say gender, because I do teach it more from a gender perspective and not just women. So really the importance of understanding that gender is on a spectrum and that it's not just males and females, but what does it mean to be of a different gender than men? And what does that mean as it relates to the justice system? So maybe what does it mean to be a female as a victim? What does it mean to be a female as an offender? And what does it mean to be a female in a male-dominated field of criminology and criminal justice? And so I teach a women in crime course, but really from a gendered lens. And so those are my two favorite classes, but largely because I get people to think about things from a different perspective, which is, I think goes back to what Stacey's saying, where it's just sort of like, we pull the curtain behind, so you see the wizard behind the curtain. And then I love to talk about that all the time. So thank you for asking that question. I got to talk about that a little bit. How soon will you start taking classes related to your major? The first semester. Excellent question. Yes. Usually you get placed in Intro to Criminology or Intro to Criminal Justice if you're scheduled to take criminal justice as your major. For those of you who sprinkled in the psychology as your major, then likely you would be taking an Intro to Psychology major for sure. I see a hand up. Kylie?
Yeah, so this question's more specifically for Stacey. I know, I feel like in criminal justice, women have maybe a little bit harder of a job. I think they get looked down upon. So how did you go about like choosing what you wanted to do, specifically just because it is such a broad major?
So originally my plan was to go with pre-law and then immediately go to law school after my undergrad. But now my current goal is federal law enforcement. And I know law enforcement is often a field where women are underrepresented. And honestly, I am just using my drive and my passion for criminal justice in general to really push myself and break through those glass ceilings and just really, I don't know, like it's an extra boundary that I'm ready to cross over. Once you're confident in what you're studying, you're confident in what you want to do, you are unstoppable. And that's what I have to say about that.
I like it. I did have a private message that said, aside from serial killers, would profilers still be used to help find suspects? Great question. I think profilers is a little bit outdated, except if you're watching Criminal Minds, and we'll just pause for a moment because Shamar Moore is a wonderful actor. But I see where you're going with that. I saw that big smirk. I love Shamar Moore. But with that being said, I think the more accurate career title would be a forensic psychologist. So someone who's working with individuals, probably as a clinical psychologist. So psychology is the route to go. And that would be someone who then specializes working with individuals who engage in criminal behavior. And so it might be that perhaps they're doing counseling with them, or they might be doing some consulting work with law enforcement. They might work within correctional settings. There's a wide variety of where forensic psychologists may actually work. The idea of a profiler working for the FBI, like Criminal Minds, I'm sorry if this is going to break your heart. There's like 8 of them in the FBI. If you get to be one of the 8, one, I want you way to be super awesome. Please remember those of us who are the small people in the world and those of us at Niagara University. When you become wonderful and famous, my name is Dr. Dana Radatz, and I work in Timon Hall at Niagara University. But with that being said, forensic psychology is an amazing career. I really considered it before deciding to go the criminal justice route. And I actually have a student right now that just completed his master's, and I'm working with him right now on applying to clinical psychology programs because he does really want to work with individuals on a forensic counseling perspective. And so there is a lot of overlap, and a lot of students do pursue that. And it's sort of like marrying the 2 disciplines together and finding something that fits for you. I'm not sure if I answered your question right or not. Iris, do you have a question, comment, concern, fear? What can I do for you today?
That's why I put profile in quotation marks, because I realized that it's not actually called that, but like for general like knowledge based off of it.
Sure.
And I looked more, but I have to go with Matt Ray Gobler on that one. More like a him-based person.
Well, now we get to watch him in SWAT, because I'm up on the latest and greatest criminal justice shows. Wonderful. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Are you all Team Niagara yet? What else can I say to be welcome Purple Eagles here? Stacey, what can we tell them? All the cool kids come to Niagara. They have the best professors, hands down. Yes.
Dana Radatz is the best professor ever.
I didn't say it. Stacey did. She's smart. I'm not gonna lie.
That brings up a good point. Yeah, Stacey and Greg, I know as current students, you've been sitting on here and you've been listening to this the whole time. Is there anything that you were sitting here that you didn't get a chance to say that you'd like to say?
I would like to add, basically saying that there's never a dull moment on campus. There's always some sort of sports event going on that you can go to. And there's always a campus activity usually, pretty much every night. We also have a thing called Sunday Monday, which is ice cream, every first Monday of the month. So there's always just a bunch of little activities that the school puts on. And they're actually really fun. Like, they're not boring, because I tend to get bored pretty easy. So they are very fun. So I don't know. There's just never a dull moment for sure on campus, and you definitely meet a lot of friends that way too.
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't love ice cream, right?
I mean, I went the academic route, but we really should have led with the ice cream. I mean, come on, people. I'm sure it's Perry's, really. I mean, we would do no justice if it weren't Perry's. But
has to be. Thank you, Greg. Stacey, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think we hit most of the marks I wanted to add anyways, and some interesting questions were thrown into that allowed us to really get in depth in the topics that we would want to talk about. But if anyone has any questions, my email is just S and my last name, and then @mail.niagara.edu. I'll put it in the chat. And if anyone has any questions about maybe the application process, what it's like to be a freshman, what classes to take, do not hesitate to email me. I will definitely let you know, or if any questions about the Criminal Justice Association as well. But I'll type that in the chat right now in case anyone wants to shoot me an email.
Sweet. Thank you, Stacey.
Mm-hmm.
So as the admissions guy in the chat right now, I just wanted to at least mention, obviously you found us and you registered for this event and you're here tonight. So thanks for doing that. But please come visit us, come boots on the ground, come check us out, walk around campus. We're open for visitors. We have campus tours 3 times a day. We have another open house coming up in November. We have an open house in December as well. They're on Saturdays. We have a morning and afternoon session for those. We have a lot of other opportunities for you to come and we want to give you as much information as we can. We're really no pressure people. But if you're interested in us, we just want to give you all that information, just throw it all at you so that you can make the best decision for yourself. So we definitely encourage you to come back and visit as many times as you want. We will roll the purple carpet out for you every single time. And visits are a great way, one, to just see us in person, see how beautiful our campus is, and really get to know more students and more faculty members. So visits are a really, really big piece. For the seniors in high school right now, one thing I definitely wanted to mention, any opportunity to get you some extra cash, I'm always all over. We have the Eagle Experience Scholarship. Some of you already in this chat, I know specifically, have already completed this. It's a one-time $1,500 scholarship, $1,500. I mean, we're not talking pennies here. We're talking some serious chunk of change. So $1,500, you have to do 3 things if you're a senior. 1, visit campus, which all of you that attended today, that qualifies as a visit. 2, connect with your admissions counselor. You can find who your specific admissions counselor is on our website, or you can just email me. I'll put my email on the chat as well. If you Google like Niagara University admissions team, it'll say meet our team. And there's a whole website with all of our pictures and what high schools and what counties we work in. So it's super easy to find who your counselor is with all of our contact information. So visit campus, you've done. Connect with your admissions counselor, step 2. And the third piece is to submit your application by December 1st. The deadline was October 31st. We just pushed it back to December 1st. So if you do all 3 of those things, you'll get $1,500. So it's super simple. It's a great way to get more information. And it also puts you in contact with your admissions counselor. So we're here to help you through this process. I know we have some sophomores, we have some juniors, we have some seniors, we have some transfer students in here. We are more than welcoming for you to come ask us any questions and come visit at any time. Dr. Radatz, was there a couple of little pieces that you want to tune in here?
I do. I see I got one more question. So if it's okay, I want to answer that question for sure. So I got a question about what does it mean to have a liberal arts education, which I was going to try to answer in the chat, and then it gets a little too much to answer in a chat. So a liberal arts education essentially means that we place a value at the university on making sure that you are a well-rounded student. So when you come to Niagara, and let's say that you major in criminal justice, while I might be biased, and I think that's a wonderful major to take, that means that you're going to get more than just courses in criminal justice. It means that to be a well-rounded student, we believe that you should take courses in a lot of other classes to ensure that you are more worldly, for lack of a better word. So you'll take some courses in philosophy and religion. You'll have to take a natural science course and a social science course and a cultural competency course, and have some options towards some other advised electives. Another reason why you should see your academic advisor. And so essentially it's just a way to make sure that you're getting exposed to some other classes that are more foundational to any individual who has a college degree, like taking a writing class and taking an English class, that are just really good to have in your sort of your toolbox of college education. And so having a liberal arts education just simply means that we want you to be a well-rounded student in addition to taking those courses that are specific to your major. Does that answer your question? I'm sure we have some fancy videos that Kyle can send your way. I know we do them in our freshman orientation class. So if you have more questions, we can certainly provide some. But overall, it's just really making sure that you have an education that's well-rounded.
That would have been a lot to type out in a chat. For
I
sure.
know, right? I was like, this is too much for sure. Do we have one more question?
I was wondering if you guys have a virtual tour for those that are a little far away.
Ooh. Kyle,
Yes.
that's you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have some virtual pieces now. We did complete a virtual tour this summer, and they said it was going to be done a couple of weeks ago, the company that we hired, and it's still not officially on our website. But once that is up, it should be like very, 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 very soon. Once that is up, I can send you an email. That way you can literally just click and walk right through campus. It's interactive. So I'm super excited to have that up. So that'll be coming soon. We do have some clips and some videos on our website now. And also on our YouTube page, just Niagara University on YouTube, we do have from last year some cell phone walking tours. Some of our tour guides walked around and recorded the whole campus right on our YouTube page. So you can definitely check that out in the interim. And then that virtual tour, like I said, that official, nice, fancy one will be coming in just a couple of weeks.
So the last thing I was going to say is, aren't there some really, to really show my age, aren't some really cool like social media things they can follow so they can learn more about Niagara while you're making your decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Our Instagram page at Niagara University, or I think it's Niagara.
You're going to plop it in the chat is what I'm hearing
yes,
you're going to say,
yes.
right?
We'll type them in there.
For us old people that have to, yeah. So
we're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, you name it, we're on it. We have all that fun stuff going on there. So feel free, definitely follow us and all those different pages. We have definitely learned a lot today, haven't we? Lots of information, lots going on there. I think what's really exciting is, one, you were able to really kind of understand how flexible our criminology criminal justice program is. One, to really fine tune it for the area that you're specifically looking for. But what's also nice is that you got to meet a faculty member, got to meet some current students. We're not scary people here. We're really nice. We want to get to know you, and we really want to help you through this process. So we know you may have, 18 different options or 3 different options, or you're not sure of any options that might work well for you. And we welcome you if you're anywhere on that spectrum. And we will really help you through that process and really get you to where you want to go and get you out the door in 4 years on time. Unless you want to stay for your master's, then you can stay for that extra year. But it is a really, really awesome place. And if you haven't seen it in person, we definitely encourage you to come visit and check us out. So thank you again, everyone. I want to be conscious of your time today. We really appreciate you tuning in and spending time with us. My email's in the chat. And if you have anything else, just feel free to reach out to us and we would be happy to answer.
All right.